Now, from your local election headquarters, a 16th Congressional District debate between incumbent Democrat Jim Costa and challenger Republican Elizabeth Heng. Live with moderator Evan Onstadt, KC24 News. Your local election headquarters 16th Congressional District debate starts now.
2 years into the presidency of Donald Trump, voters in the Valley's 16th District have a choice. Stick with Democrat Jim Costa after 14 years in Washington, or replace him with Republican Elizabeth Heng. Costa describes himself as a moderate and chairs the center-leaning Blue Dog Democrats. Heng was valedictorian at Sunnyside High School and last year returned to the Valley after years spent as a congressional staffer in Washington. The 16th District, stretching from Fresno north to Madera and Merced and west to Los Banos, deals with many of the same challenges as other areas of the Valley: water insecurity, poverty, an uncertain immigration policy, and sometimes dangerous air quality. The decision this year before voters: who is the best person to better the lives of the people he or she represents? Good evening. We are so excited to have you with us for this congressional debate here on KC24. A special welcome to those of you joining us online on Facebook and at yourcentralvalley.com. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Just make sure you use the hashtag CostaHengDebate. And an extra special welcome to the two candidates joining us here in studio, Congressman Jim Costa and Elizabeth Heng. Thanks so much.
Great to be here, Evan.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. All right, so here is how this debate will work. We're going to move through a number of topics over the next hour. Unless I say otherwise, the questions are mine. The candidates have not seen them. When I ask a question, each candidate will have up to 60 seconds to respond. Now, if there's a follow-up or a rebuttal, again, unless I say otherwise, let's keep those answers to 30 seconds. And when their time is up, we're going to hear a ding and just wrap it up as quick as you can at that point. We appreciate it. It's pretty simple. Those are the rules. We want to jump right into the questions here. No opening statements, because I want to cut straight to the heart of what this race is all about, this debate. Ms. Heng, your campaign at its core is based on this premise: that under the congressman's representation of the 16th District, nothing has changed. Define nothing.
You know, under 14 years, if you look at our congressional district, we are still one of the poorest congressional districts in the whole country. The median income here is one of the lowest, at $412 out of 435. I believe that we can do better. We've been talking about the same things for far too long, whether that is need for water storage, immigration reform, our challenges with our education system. Like, if you look at our education, for example, 9 in 10 people in our congressional district have a high school or below degree. We can do better, and we need to provide opportunities such as vocational training, career technical training, trade skills for our community, so that people have opportunities in here, so they break through the vicious cycles of poverty. In that time, nothing has changed, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to give our Valley a new voice.
Ms. Heng, thanks very much. Congressman, this month, she tweeted that you've only passed one bill during your time in Washington, and that it was to name a post office. Is that true or false? And
no, it's false. I've passed 90 bills, and when you're in the minority, as we've been for the last 8 years, the key is when you introduce a piece of legislation is to get that in the form of an amendment in the bill that the chairman of the committee is carrying. And we saw that example last week. President Trump signed a measure that would increase storage supply for new Exchequer Dam for Merced Irrigation District. I've worked together on a bipartisan basis on a host of these issues. The Veterans Home became a reality because I've got the state and federal authorization. The cath lab and the x-ray at the Veterans Hospital is a reality because of over $200 million. The $16 million for the Tiger grant that I worked with Ashley Swearingen and others on has opened up Fulton Street. There are a whole host of things that I've done. On water, brokering an important agreement on legislation between Congressman McCarthy and Senator Feinstein, provided authorization for temperance in San Luis Reservoir, and, you know, moved on a host of other water efforts that I think are too significant and numerous to mention in 1 minute.
It's tight. I understand. Ms. Heng, go ahead and respond.
Yeah, I think 90 bills is a clear exaggeration. Each year, we only have 90 to 100 bills that are introduced, like you do the hard work and you get that across the finish line. So just to give you an example, the Speaker of the House has 4. So to say that there are 90, I think is an exaggeration.
Well, I mean, aren't we arguing semantics here, though? But I mean, aren't we isn't this semantics? semantics, whether it's an amendment or whether it's a bill. This is still legislation, is it not, Ms. Heng, that he's introducing?
And I think the clear point about that, it's incredibly difficult to be the one that authorizes, does the hard work to get it across the finish line. Co-sponsoring and things of that nature is easy. That takes 2 minutes.
Well, Congressman, let me ask you about this then. Because on Twitter, Ms. Heng said that you never introduced a bill related to infrastructure or education or water storage. And people read that tweet here in this district and they go, well, why hasn't he?
Well, I have. And the Natural Resources Committee, of which I'm one of the ranking members, there's legislation that resulted in the raising of New Exchequer Dam would not have happened if Congressman Denham and I had not worked together. And that was through legislation that I introduced and he introduced, and then my bill became a part of his bill, and then his bill became part of a much larger bill that was part of the House and Senate action. That's how legislation works. In the Ag Committee, a lot of our success there has been on the reauthorization of the Farm Bill. It's one of the most bipartisan things we do. My first Farm Bill, we created the specialty crop for all of the host of vegetables and fruits that we grow here in California. It's now a permanent title of the Farm Bill. 4 years ago, the California dairy industry, hurting hard, wanted to be a part of the federal milk marketing order. Congressman David Valadao and I made that possible. This year we're working on the SNAP program that's very important with the Bridge Academy here in Fresno to ensure that we can make a difference for people who receive assistance on food.
Let me talk about some of the ads that we've been seeing. Ms. Heng, you've been attacked by the Costa campaign for not voting in certain past elections. Is that fair criticism against you?
Look, when I was young and I was 19, I didn't understand the power of my voice. But that is why it's going to be my mission to getting young people involved and engaged with voting. Otherwise, we continue to send career politicians back to Washington, D.C. that do absolutely nothing for our community. Look at our community. Just take a look around as you're referencing one of my ads. If you look at it, and I've already talked about this, we still don't have enough water storage for our community. We've been talking about that for decades now. I can't imagine having a job, not doing my job, that whatever that one thing was, and let's say that's water storage, not getting it done and still having a job in any industry in which you are in. So we need a new leader with a voice that's going to fight for those challenges that we've been talking about for far too long.
Well, about that ad, Congressman, you did put her face on a milk carton, yes, labeled her as missing. Here's the thing. She did a lot more in her 20s than I know I did in my 20s, for example. Is it fair to describe her as missing?
No, I think in 2016, she missed the presidential primary. This isn't just, 8 years ago. Missing 10 out of 19 elections. Yeah, we're all busy. We all work. We go to school. Guess what? That's why you have an absentee ballot. And so, the dog ate my homework, I guess, is one excuse you could give. But voting, people have sacrificed their lives to ensure that people could have the right to vote. It's one of the most precious rights we have as citizens. And so when you missed the election 2 years ago in terms of the presidential primary, that gives wonder, and you want to become a member of Congress. I've never missed an election since I became of voting age. But as it relates to water, Congressman Valadao, Congressman Denham, Congressman Nunes, we all work together on these issues. If that criticism is laid open to me, the same water situation that we've had here is a result of a lot of struggle and fight between federal and state issues that are always constant.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Heng, I'll give you 30 seconds.
If we want to go back to the discussion of working bipartisanly with, Congressman Denham and Valadao and Nunes, 2 weeks ago, the president passed an executive memorandum and that's going to bring more water to our valley here and rewrites the biological opinions, placing humans above fish. Mr. Costa was nowhere to be found. He spent the last month attacking me with over $1 million in ad buys versus working in a bipartisan fashion to get water to our valley storage here.
All right, well, Congressman, I'll give you 30 seconds to respond to that.
It'll take less than that. That signature of the memorandum was good, but it was really based upon a lot of work that we've been doing for several years. And let's face it, that was a photo op there in Las Vegas. It was fine, and I commended the president for his actions. But there was a reason why I wasn't invited. The the bottom line is that I've been working here on people for the Valley. That's what I do every day. Meeting with water interests. We have quarterly meetings with the water managers, east side, west side, and we work on solving problems.
All right, well, we're going to talk a little bit more about water here a little bit later in the debate, but I want to continue on the ads that we've been seeing and get that out of the way. Ms. Heng, you put a Costa lookalike into red high heels, saying that it shows that he's walking really in Nancy Pelosi's footsteps. It got a lot of attention, national attention. Some people said it was a sexist ad. But then when you look at the differences in the voting records, and you can argue about that between the congressman and Nancy Pelosi, there are differences there. Is that a fair comparison, or is this just kind of, you know, campaign hyperbole?
No, I believe that this ad was a very important ad and message to send to our community. And that is, when you vote with Nancy Pelosi nearly 90% of the time, you're no longer voting for the Valley here. You're voting for the people in San Francisco and environmentalists and Nancy Pelosi. And those are votes in which don't align with what our Valley cares about. And that goes back to, you know, propping up environmentalists that are not a proponent for the water storage that we have in here in the Valley, and immigration reform that I believe is different for us here in the Valley, in which we haven't had a solution for decades now. And it goes back to the challenges that I've been talking about with education. And so when you're voting with Nancy Pelosi nearly 90% of the time, you can no longer say you're a blue dog Democrat.
Congressman, go ahead and respond.
Well, the ad was false, false, and false. I have voted to oppose Nancy Pelosi multiple times. I've indicated I think it's time for new leadership in the Democratic caucus. And I think that commercial was in poor taste, and it was hurtful to a lot of people in our community and throughout the country. Some argued it was homophobic. The fact is that we don't want to make light and further divide our communities. And I think one could look at that ad and see that maybe that's what's the attempt. But the real story here is that every 2 years, they try to run Nancy Pelosi against me. That's happened in the last 4 election cycles. So I don't know how many times my opponent would like to mention Nancy Pelosi's name here. I'll give her the remaining 10 seconds and she can say as many times as she thinks she needs to say it for the purpose of the debate. I've always been an independent person for the people of our Valley. That's what I care about. Everybody knows I've been a strong voice, and I will continue to be, because that's who I am.
Well, Ms. Heng, go ahead. I'm going to give you last word on this one, because I'm pretty certain that you weren't looking to offend anybody with that ad. Did you find that hurtful? And go ahead and respond. 30 seconds, though.
I'm sorry if there are any hurt feelings that are out there, but this ad came down to policies. Those policies in which Mr. Costa has consistently voted with Nancy Pelosi does not resonate for us here in the Valley. And I was merely making a policy point because we're struggling here in the Valley, and it's long overdue to having new leadership that is an independent voice.
Well, let's talk about one of those issues that's still struggling to get solved right now, immigration. Because right now, there's thousands of men, women, children in Mexico, the southern part of the country, making their way up to our southern border. Over the weekend, a second migrant caravan left El Salvador heading north. President Trump has called this an invasion of our country. Just recently, he ordered 5,200 American troops down to the border. Congressman, do you support that move to send the troops?
I don't know that it's necessary. We already have 2,000 National Guard troops down there, and clearly the first priority ought to be to protect our borders. I've always felt that way. I've been down to the border several months ago, and but the president, I think, has really made a mess of this whole immigration issue. I mean, separating children from their parents, I don't think anybody supports. I suggested in a letter that I sent to the president on Friday that he show the leadership by sitting together with the president of Mexico. There have been caravans before, and there will be caravans in the future because of the problems at El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. And until we go to the root cause of what's creating these caravans, you know, we can put a whole we've got more troops that they're proposing to put on the border than we have in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. That doesn't make any sense. And by the way, those people aren't going to get to the border for another 2 or 3 weeks. So obviously there's a lot of political motivation in this effort. I think calling the Organization of American States, which is an important part of trying to deal with the cause of the problems of these caravans, which is in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nicaragua.
Thank you. Ms. Heng, the move, first of all, to send the troops, do you support that? And also the timing of it, the congressman brought it up. I've seen estimates be even as much as 2 months before these immigrants would reach the border. Is this political in any way, you think, from the president?
Look, as the daughter of refugees, I would love nothing more than get immigration right in our country once and for all. Mr. Costa has had 14 years to introduce an immigration bill that works or to solve it for our community that we have so desperately have needed. To date, has never introduced an immigration bill, ever.
Well, I got you, but as far as the question about the sending the troops there, do you think that that's a smart move?
Right now, because we don't have a process at the border, and we need to make sure that our men and women, whether that be border security and our National Guard, have all of the resources that are available to them, and sending our troops there, I believe that it can only support the efforts, the ongoing efforts and challenges we're having at the border today.
All right, so 30 seconds, and I know it's such a difficult issue, but what should be done with these? I mean, these are thousands of people. When they get to the border, what do you suggest? How do we handle that?
We need to figure out, and I believe that there has been the failed policy. We had the opportunity this year to pass comprehensive immigration reform that would provide our national and border security with the allocations of funding in which they needed, but it would have been also compassionate to those who are asylum seekers and also DACA recipients for our valley here. And Mr. Costa voted against that, and that would have helped alleviate the crisis today.
I know it would have helped, but again, and I got into this with TJ Cox last week in their debate with his debate with Congressman Valadeo. We don't have the time machine. We can't go back and fix what wasn't fixed. So how do we handle this right now? And Congressman, you're going to have to answer this because I know it's a hard question. So, but what do we do?
We need to be compassionate with asylum seekers and DACA recipients. I believe those two are the most vulnerable in our communities. Everyone comes to the United States because they are seeking opportunities. It is the beacon of hope for immigrants that are coming here. And right now, we are in this crisis because of failed leadership on immigration for far too long.
Congressman, what do we do with these thousands of people once they get to our border?
Well, I think we had a chance this year to bring a clean DREAM Act to the floor that could have served as a vehicle to do more in comprehensive immigration reform. I think that, again, as I suggested to the President on Friday, he call a meeting together with the leaders of the Organization of American States to deal with these people that are, in many cases, escaping horrific conditions, sex trafficking, gangs, killings that are taking place. And I think as Americans, our compassion to refugees like Elizabeth's family and others, our heart goes out to that. But the solution is dealing with the root cause of the problem. Now, as far as comprehensive immigration reform, I supported it under President Bush, I supported it under President Obama, and it's John McCain, Senator McCain had a measure that passed the Senate in 2013 by 68 to 32. Their votes were there among Republicans and Democrats, and by the way, the Republicans have been in control for 8 years, that would have solved the issue with undocumented, with dreamers, with workers for our agricultural communities. I think we have to go back to that.
Well, I understand, but I'm still not getting an answer as to what exactly happens with those thousands of people at the border. Do they go through the process? Do we try to let as many in as we can? Do we say, heck no, sorry?
Well, we've made a mess this year out of that process. I've been at the San Ysidro border. I've seen homes where 70 boys were and other homes where girls were being kept. And these tents, that's not a solution. And so it gets back to your point. A solution is dealing with it on 2 levels. One is to fix our broken immigration system, and that gets back to whether you do comprehensive reform or whether you do piecemeal reform. We tried comprehensive reform in 2013, didn't bring it up in the House. We've tried piecemeal the last 2 years, and it has led to nothing. So I think you've got to do with that, going back to comprehensive immigration reform, and at the same time, you've got to deal with the people on the border. And the way Evan, that you deal with that is by stemming the flow, by dealing with the root of the problem.
About comprehensive immigration reform, Congressman, you'll get 60 seconds for this answer. You were in Congress, as Ms. Heng has pointed out, when the president had the White House, when it was President Obama, when Democrats had the House, Democrats had the Senate. You had the opportunity right then to pass a comprehensive bill that would make life so much easier for so many people, I think, when it comes to this issue today. And yet that was not done. Was that a failure on your part?
No, I think it was a failure on Congress's part. I mean, I'm not on the policy committee, and she keeps referring to that introduce a bill. I'm on the Agriculture Committee for this valley, and I'm on the Natural Resources Committee for this valley. Those are two key critical committees for issues that we deal with. If you're on the proper policy committee that deals with immigration reform, then it's appropriate to introduce the legislation. You can grandstand and say, I've introduced a bill, but that doesn't mean anything if you're not on the committee of jurisdiction. So I've chosen not to grandstand. I've chosen to instead work with my colleagues on a bipartisan basis. Senator Feinstein has a measure right now that would be a blue card to deal with the agricultural labor that we need here. And there's a companion measure in the House. I've co-sponsored that. But, you know, we've got to quit making this a partisan political issue, because that's the only way we're going to solve this.
Ms. Heng, Congressman Costa believes that there should be an earned pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants.
Can I respond to the last response first?
Well, sure, but in that, wrap that question in though, because where do you stand when we come to a, that pathway for undocumented immigrants, not just DACA recipients? But go ahead and respond as well.
Yeah, to respond firstly to the grandstanding on committee jurisdiction, having worked on Capitol Hill for about 6 years, it is very possible to move legislation not under your committee's jurisdiction. And when we're talking about ag community, that is one of the #1 topics that every farmer brings up to me when I'm going up and down 99 and across 152 or 140, is that we don't have a good labor and guest worker program that works for our community. So that legislation can be introduced and it can be moved. You just need a champion that actually cares about it and wants to get it done. #1. #2, sorry, your second question.
No, it's okay. I'll give you some extra time for it.
With respects to the individuals that are here, I believe we need to be compassionate. But first and foremost, we must have border and national security to know the criminals and sex traffickers and stuff that are coming inside and outside the country. And then second of all, we can be compassionate with everything with immigration reform after that. We have had failed leadership on this topic for far too long, leading us to the economic crisis that we are in today. We need to be compassionate with those such as DACA recipients and asylums, but also make sure that it works for our economy, for our farmers and all the guest worker programs and laborers that are here.
All right, so you mentioned the guest farm laborers, you mentioned DACA recipients, people seeking asylum, but what about the rest, about families? Do you think that there should be a path? Obviously, Republicans, a lot of them call that amnesty. Do you think that it is amnesty?
As long as there's border and national security and we stop the flows, I am open to being compassionate with that discussion for those that are here, because we have had failed leadership for far too long on immigration, both sides of the aisle.
Thank you. Congressman, let me ask you about that deal that keeps coming up, the full border wall funding for DACA protection. You don't think that's a fair deal? We've talked about it before.
There were other aspects to it. I mean, they put a 400,000 person cap on the allowance for the agricultural workforce. We have perhaps 700,000 to 800,000 farm workers here in California. That doesn't help California. They had an electronic verify mechanism, which we have opposed in California agriculture unless you have an overall comprehensive reform. And it had a touchback provision. The majority of California agriculture opposed that good lot bill, and I voted against it. So that's different from the Clean Dream Act that I support. And you know, the last time I checked, I heard my opponent say failing economy. I think our economy is doing quite well. I mean, we've gone here in this valley for the first time below 6% unemployment, both in Fresno counties and Merced counties. We've been on a 9-year economic rebound. And the Valley economy, you talk to farmers, you talk to business people, is doing well. So we could do better. And clearly there are inequities and income gaps.
Yes.
And I would be happy to address those at some point.
Well, we could talk about that here in a little bit. Ms. Heng, go ahead and respond to that.
Just really quick, with respects to the immigration policy that Mr. Costa referenced of the Good Lot bill, there was also the bipartisan bill with the Denham bill in which he voted against, that our community should have been a proponent of in moving comprehensive immigration reform that provided DACA recipients with the security that they deserve, and at the same time being bipartisan and having the border and national security that we need, that would have alleviated a lot of the challenges that we're facing right now as we see asylum seekers coming across the borders in the caravans.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's go back to you, Congressman, because, yeah, the Good Law bill, that was kind of the big bad wolf for Democrats, but there was that other option out there. Why did you vote against that?
Well, because, again, it had the cap and it had the E-Verify. And I talked about it with my Valley colleagues, and I just wasn't prepared to support a bill that the majority of California agriculture opposed. And it was very clear that this was not going to be a solution to our farm labor problem, and it wasn't a measure that was going to get out of the Senate. And there was a lot of effort that was placed on it, but I really felt that we needed to go back to a bipartisan compromise, and this really didn't provide that bipartisan support on a host of other issues that were important.
30 seconds, Ms. Heng.
It was completely party politics, and once again, this just goes back to show how Mr. Costa continues to vote alongside with Nancy Pelosi and made immigration reform a partisan topic rather than working hand in hand with our Valley representatives to get this bill through that would have provided DACA recipients with the security that they deserve and been compassionate and had border and national security with that.
Well, we just got about another minute before we got to take a break. I just want to ask you quick, 30 seconds each, this latest story today from the president saying that he would like to try to end birthright citizenship, where if you are born in this country, even if your parents are not citizens, then you are automatically a citizen. Congressman, I'll ask you to get the first word on this, then Ms. Heng. 30 seconds, if you could.
Well, I agree with Speaker Ryan. I don't think the president has the executive authority to eliminate that. The birthright 15th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States has been in place for almost 150 years. And again, I think this is more partisan politics. If we want to have a debate appropriately on this matter, this 15th Amendment, then in the next Congress we ought to have that discussion, we ought to have hearings, and we ought to follow the appropriate means, not simply thinking that you can sign an executive order and somehow wish it away.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Heng.
Look, I disagree with it, and this goes back to the root of the problem, right? If we solved immigration reform once and for all, we wouldn't be having this discussion here in our community. We've had failed leadership for far too long.
Thank you very much. Let's take a quick break right now. You're watching this debate for Congressional District 16 from the Fresno studios of KC24. We're back in 2 minutes.
Life can change in an instant. Be covered when it does with a health plan through Covered California. We offer free expert help choosing the best plan for you, and all of our plans include free preventive care. Financial help is available, so check for yourself to see what savings you qualify for. For health insurance starting January 1st, enroll by December 15th. Because you never know when life will change. Get covered today.
Round table pizza?
And we're back with Congressman Jim Costa, a Democrat running for re-election in California's District 16, and his Republican challenger, Elizabeth Heng. Thanks so much for being here. We got 24 minutes to go in this debate. The time flies, so let's get right to it. I want to talk about water. Congressman, I'm going to ask you the first question, and it's a question I actually asked T.J. Cox last week in that Valadeo-Cox debate. You've called for more water storage. You've supported Temperance Flat and some other projects, but it's largely members of your party, the Democrats, who here in California have made it very difficult to fund some of these projects. Do Democrats have the wrong priorities when it comes to water in California?
Well, I differ with a lot of my Democratic colleagues, including Nancy Pelosi, on water issues. But let me tell you something. Water's always been contentious in California. You know, Mark Twain once said, whiskey's made for drinking, water's made for fighting. It's been regional, not so much partisan. And we know what happened in 1905 with the Owens Valley and the city of Los Angeles, with Hetch Hetchy in 1912. And so water issues are always contentious. But, you know, the WIN Act that I cited earlier that provided authorization for temperance in San Luis was signed by President Obama in December of 2016, along with other provisions that were helpful. I think we lose when we make water a partisan issue. And the efforts in the Delta right now to deal with moving the water with the reset of the biological opinions is critical, not only to our valley, but the rest of the state. You've got to use all the water tools in the water toolbox. And that involves storage, that involves groundwater recharge, and that involves trying to make additional water conservation efforts and desalinization. There's no one single solution.
Appreciate it. I understand. No, there's not. Ms. Heng, you have been critical of the congressman in his tenure. On water issues, a lot of times he does stand shoulder to shoulder with many of his Republican colleagues here in the Valley. Is this an issue that you can really attack him on?
Yes, and this is it. We still don't have water storage, period. We don't have enough for our valley, and with what's coming down in the pipelines in Sacramento with Sigma and the Bay Delta plan and everything else, we don't have enough water here in the valley. And key areas in where the federal government can have a role here is two things need to happen, and I understand this having worked in Capitol Hill. Number one, we need to have a president that requests water storage as a priority in the budget so that later Congress, that is a proponent for water, can actually move it across the finish line, not being an earmark. Under President Obama, Mr. Costa was not able to getting the president to place water storage as a priority in the budget. Therefore, we were incapable of moving legislation across the finish line. We saw just last month that this recent president was able to move water storage and request that so that we could get money for like Shasta and some of the other water storage priorities.
Thank you, Ms. Heng. Congressman, go ahead and respond to that point that, you know, with Obama in the White House, you were not able to convince him to make water storage a priority.
Well, that's not true.
Seconds.
When he signed the WIN Act in 2016, that authorized storage for temperance. It authorized increased storage for San Luis Reservoir, and it also increased storage for Shasta. And we approved that funding this year to the point because it was $20 million that was put in the budget by Congressman McCarthy that I supported. And as you pointed out, there's a whole host of efforts that we've worked on together here. But let's do the numbers. Temperance Flat, over 180,000 acre-feet of additional water if we can get that together. The raising of San Luis Reservoir, 120,000 acre-feet. The bill that the president signed last week, 57,000 acre-feet of water for Merced County. Coupled with the efforts with the legislation that we're working on, I think adds up to hundreds and thousands of acre-feet of water, rescheduled water that would not have happened over the last several years had it not been for a bipartisan effort, working both with the Obama administration and now.
Thank you. Ms. Heng, I'll give you a chance to respond to that.
Yes, and this is the thing. If in fact the President of the United States places it in his budget, then we are able to move legislation to getting all the water storage that we've been talking about for far too long, whether that's to finish off the California water projects of, Los Banos, Sites, Temperance, Shasta. We're able to move that quickly and efficiently. And under President Obama, we unfortunately, during our toughest times with with water, we're not able to get that through.
All right, so I asked about Democrat priorities. One second, Congressman. I want to move on to this next thing and talk a little bit about climate change, because a majority of scientists say climate change is going to lead to more severe droughts here in California in the years to come. But it does seem to be Republicans who are least concerned about enacting policies to stem that tide. Do Republicans have the wrong priorities here?
No, and I believe this, with the increase in amount of population, I'm not a scientist, but I believe that the climate is changing. But it is not through government regulations that will get us to the 2 degrees Celsius that people who are supportive of climate change tend to discuss. It is through the private sector. So it's going to be the future of like Elon Musk and them that are able to get us to that 2 degrees Celsius. And I do believe that's through the private sector, not more government regulations from the federal government.
Congressman, 60 seconds to respond.
Well, climate change is real, and the question is, are we going to have a smart strategy to deal with it, or are we going to just turn our heads and hope it cures itself? The fact is that we could see sea levels rising in the Delta, which would dramatically diminish our ability to move water through the Delta from north to south. We could find reductions in our snowpack, and you can have additional reservoir supply, but if we end up with more rain and less snow, then you have less ability to measure that water to keep it for the summertime. And so I think a smart strategy is that we look for the future and we plan it. And the fact is that we've been working on a host of issues, and I think my opponent's comments are Pollyanna to say you introduce a bill. The Southern California, the Bay Area, and the Valley are always going to be at loggerheads as it relates to our water supply. And the only way you're going to work at it is providing broad solutions that benefit the water supply for the entire state. Because simply introducing a bill is not going to solve the problem.
Understood.
So I didn't say introduce a bill. I said convincing the president to authorize the budget and having a Congress that actually wants to move water storage across the finish line. Under the leadership with President Obama and Nancy Pelosi and yourself, we were not able to get that done.
Let's talk about health care a little bit. What's one thing that Congress could do right now, that would give families in the Valley access to better health coverage and at a better price for their pocketbooks? Ms. Heng, I'll start with you on this.
We need to open up markets. It's that Affordable Care Act that we passed under Mr. Costa and Nancy Pelosi again. We didn't even know what was in that bill. It was reckless. And just because as I go up and down the Valley talking to constituents, they're constantly telling me that now their health care costs more than their mortgages and their rents. And just because you have a piece of paper that says you have health care doesn't actually mean that it works for you. We need a solution that's more market-based to reduce the cost, because quite frankly, this is failed policy that has hurt our community. And we were told that we were able to keep our doctors, and we weren't. That was one of the biggest lies of this whole thing.
Well, let me ask you then, just a quick follow-up, 30 seconds. Give me a mechanism. You say, let's open up the markets. How? Say you get this job, you get into Congress. What can you guys do to open up those markets? Something specific.
I think looking at ways where there's more competition, and if that's there's not a hard line on this, but if that's opening up state borders, for example, and allowing us to have cross exchanges, that will reduce the cost because it makes it more competitive. Many people want us to believe that it's the government or insurance companies should be the providers of your health care. I believe that it should be between yourself and the doctor.
Congressman, give me one thing that Congress can do right now that would make things better for families, better coverage, less price.
Well, I think it's reckless to talk about repealing the Affordable Health Care Act and not offering something real to replace it with. That would eliminate people's ability to have insurance if they have a pre-existing condition. Nobody wants to lose that ability today, or to keep your children under your health care policy until 26 years of age. There are flaws, to be sure, in the Affordable Health Care Act, and we ought to be sitting down and working on them, but not talking about repealing without replacing it. And that's what has been lacking in my opponent's response and in the legislation that has come up, year after year after year. The problem solvers, of which I'm a member of, 24 Republicans, 24 Democrats, have offered a proposal to fix a number of the flaws. The Kaiser Foundation has indicated that the recent increase in insurance costs, about 16%, is a result of the administration's policy to want to repeal the Affordable Health Care Act and not replace it with anything. So the markets have responded and prices have increased.
30 seconds then. What are one of those things that the problem solvers groups that you're part of, what is one of the things that they've said, all right, we could do that?
Well, we've talked about allowing for us to negotiate the drug prices, much as we do with the Veterans Administration. You know, this is where government is involved. The reason that our veterans who have earned their benefits, every one of them, have cheaper drug prices is because the VA administration negotiates on those drug prices on behalf of our veterans. There's no reason why, whether you're an older American or somewhere in between, that we should be paying the cost for these prescription drugs that we are today.
Congressman, do you see the U.S. moving to a universal or a single-payer healthcare system in your lifetime, for example?
Well, I try not to predict the future. But, you know, I think that we have some of the best health care in the world. Valley Medical Center is the second largest healthcare facility in California, one of only 5 trauma and burn center units. Its ER facility is the highest used in the state, but yet it has a host of costs that are unpaid for, and they have to be absorbed in other ways. The bottom line is that we don't allow people to stay on the side of the road in America when they're sick or hurt. They get health care, but they get it in some of the most expensive ways possible. And that's why Democrats and Republicans need to tone down the rhetoric and figure out how we sit down and work on these things that we can agree on, like prescription drugs, like dealing with the non-payments in which, you know, yeah, healthy people pay for sick people. Speaker Rand said that, but good drivers pay for bad drivers. That's what insurance is all about. And so we can fix this if we get past the partisan politics.
But are you open to a universal health care plan?
I'm not sure how we pay for it, and I think that's that's the challenge.
All right. Well, let me just say this as I bring it to you, Ms. Heng, that other countries do something like this, and they spend far less money per person than the United States currently pays right now, and less people are covered. So why not just look at that and be like, oh, well, maybe that is something that is worth exploring?
Now, just to really go back to the point with Mr. Costa pointing out of saying that I want to repeal it without having any alternative there. I believe that's false. I'm simply talking about how it was reckless that it went through, and I was answering your question with regards of market access and reducing the price. We need to figure out how to reduce the cost of health care. And so your question, Evan, apologize.
Universal health care.
Universal health care.
Single payer, whatever you want to, however you want to go about it. Medicare for all.
I believe that health care on a main principle should be this, in that people should be able to access medical care with their doctors and not break the bank. Many believe that it's through the government or it should be through insurance companies. It needs to be as close as possible between the doctors and the patient. I do not believe that an individual should have to get an approval through the government in order to get access to medical care.
All right, thank you.
But that doesn't explain how you pay for it.
Well, no, none of it does. I mean, I could ask both of you right now if you would vote to raise taxes in order to pay for a universal health care system.
You know,
what would the answer be to that?
During the debate of the health care acts, people say, we don't want government involved in my health care program. Do not touch Medicare.
Yeah, I know.
Medicare is a government program.
Yes.
And that's where this discussion, I think, confuses the public because they don't understand the intricacies of Medicare, Medicaid, and the implications in terms of the in-government involvement, the VA system. My uncle served in the military. They like their VA system. I helped improve care with a cath lab, with an imaging center that didn't exist several years ago at the VA hospital here in Fresno. And now we have a hospice facility. But all of those things, to your point, Evan, cost money.
Yeah. Ms. Heng, go ahead.
To go back to that, the Affordable Care Act was passed recklessly. We didn't know what was in it, and that included raiding Medicare by $716 billion. And quite frankly, we created 23 co-ops, 17 of them failed, and in addition, like $1.5 billion, I believe, was taxpayers had to kind of pay for this, and people didn't end up having coverage and lost their coverage. So when we talk about healthcare, yes, Medicare is included in that, and Medicaid is also. And what was passed through the Affordable Care Act, once again, a partisan topic, ended up hurting a lot of people in our community and costing the taxpayers more.
Let me talk about our air quality and then ask you a question about it, because our air quality here in the Valley is some of the worst in the country. Our kids' asthma rates are, I believe, the worst in the country. And as a parent, you know, I got a 1- and a 3-year-old. That really worries me, I'll be honest. And so what is something that you would support doing right now that would improve Valley air quality? Ms. Heng, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, air quality is an incredibly important topic, and the challenges that we have with asthma and sort of the different types of lung diseases and stuff that come from this is a huge problem. So it would be looking at investing in private sector entities that can help clean up some of the air quality that we have here in the Valley.
Private sector, I'm not sure exactly.
So if there are companies out there in which we can work towards reducing some of the challenges with pesticides or the areas that we can improve, I believe that would be a good thing for us here in the Valley.
Congressman, what would you do about, what's one thing that we could do right now?
Well, let me tell you what the challenge is. 80% of our pollution here in the Valley is through mobile sources of emission. 20% of it's stationary sources of emission. We've had a strategy through the Air Resources Board that I helped create years ago to deal with both the mobile sources of emission and to reduce them, as well as our stationary sources of emission, which primarily are dust. The agriculture community has done a great deal here in recent years to reduce the dust level from 10 microns to 2.5, and that's a success. But a lot of our traffic that goes through 99, I-5, and our rails system are putting bad air into the sky, and in this bathtub ring that we have in the Valley, the air continues to be pushed down toward Tulare, Kings, and Kern County. In Arvin, you have the worst air quality. So what do? You have cleaner burning vehicles. You have cleaner burning standards for emissions. And it's a strategy that comes together. And I've supported that legislation that have provided cleaner burning vehicles. And now we're going to non-fossil fuel burning vehicles. All of these are part of an overall strategy.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Heng, the Trump administration has been trying to roll back some of the Obama-era administration regulations when it comes to how many miles per gallon a car has to get and stuff like that. Do you think that the President Trump is right in doing that, or does that concern you?
Look, I think at the end of the day, we need a cleaner environment for us as we have population increases and challenges with medical challenges such as asthma. And I do believe it is through, you know, as Mr. Costa mentioned, right? It's vehicles that are cleaner that the private sector gets us essentially to that point. I don't believe it's the government that gets us there at the end of the day, because they're the ones that need to invest in this so that, and we need to educate our community. So at the end of the day, we have a community that goes towards, you know, cleaner sources.
A big debate spot this past couple of years. I got to keep moving, Congressman. I'm sorry, but I want to ask about the president's tax cut that we saw here in the first 2 years of his presidency. How should voters look at that? Ms. Heng, I'll start with you. 60 seconds.
Yes, I believe my opponent voted against the tax bill, but here is where I stand on taxes in general. People know how to spend their money better than the government does. And, you know, and with this tax bill, on average, our community received $600 per person to spend on groceries, to spend on school supplies for their children, and to add another gas tank to their car. And so in one of the poorest congressional districts in the whole country, I know how far $600 goes for families that are struggling. So, and also on top of that, those that tax bill invested in places such as downtown Fresno and Merced and for economic development that I believe in which we need. And it is undeniable, through this tax bill, wages have increased. Unemployment for African Americans, Latinos, women, Asian Americans are at an all-time low due to these tax cuts.
Ms. Heng, thanks. Congressman, the president's tax cut. Was this a good thing, a bad thing? How do you rate it?
Well, there were many good things in the tax bill, but I opposed it for the following reasons. One, I don't think it was equitable. The president, I think, as much as said that because he's talking about now providing a tax relief for middle-income taxpayers. It should have been a part of the first tax bill, which was one of the reasons I opposed it. Secondly, the fact is that it put a cap of $10,000 on what you could deduct for state and local sales tax. Next year, there will be 6 million Californians that will pay an additional $55 billion in taxes because they no longer have that deduction for state and local sales tax. So it's punitive to California and 13 other states. And then finally, it added $2.2 trillion to our deficit. It could have been paid for. It wasn't. And the money that came offshore could have been used for the president's proposal that I support, which is infrastructure. We need to increase our infrastructure. $1.5 trillion came back. That could have been money that, a portion of it, that could have helped much needed infrastructure that would also help the economy.
Congressman, coming right back to you right now, talking about the president's trade policy. Because obviously we've seen this new deal with Mexico and Canada. We've seen a lot of fears from farmers when it comes to a trade war that's affecting them. Bottom line, are Valley farmers better off or are they worse off because of the president's trade policies?
Well, right now it's uncertain. And I've said clearly that no one wins a trade war. And you know why? Because everybody has leverage. I'm pleased to see that we finally came together with Canada and Mexico, and I'm reading the details of it, and I hope I can support that legislation that the president agreed upon. Canada and Mexico are our two biggest trading partners, larger than the next 8 countries combined. And clearly, I mean, you have $1.6 trillion in trade with Canada, and we actually have a slight surplus. Yes, the president's correct to indicate that China's been a bad actor, but it's been that way for years. Both the Obama and the Bush administration did. This one-upping each other on tariffs have hurt our almond industry, they've hurt our pistachio industry, they've hurt our dairy industry. And so clearly everybody has leverage. We want China to help us with North Korea and denuclearizing, but yet if we continue this trade war, how helpful are they going to be? Those steel tariffs are hurting American consumers and the American automobile industry. And so clearly, no one wins a trade war.
Ms. Heng, the trade policies, better off or worse off for Valley farmers?
Here's a point in which I agree with the congressman on trade war is not good for our Valley farmers. As I've gone up and down speaking to them, that they have reiterated that to me, especially with the tariffs that are ensuing from China and Europe. I'm glad with USMCA, CA with Mexico and Canada that we are coming together on that. But as many people, my biggest concern with trade is that we need to make sure that we have more free trade agreements around the world so we're not locked out. When we were renegotiating the USMCA contract, the dairy community in particular was telling me how with Canada it looks good, but because other markets such as the European Union are coming to renegotiate with Canada to Mexico also, it's posing major problems for them because they're getting locked out of key areas for the dairy community down in Mexico.
All right, we are just about out of time, but got a little less than a minute, so I'll give you guys each about 20, 25 seconds or so. So this kind of, I'll give you the softball before the closing statements. What's the best part? What do you enjoy most about living in the Valley? Congressman, you'll go first on this one.
Well, this is my home. It always has been, you know. Local schools, Fresno State, go Dogs in the top 20. And, you know, you see with Fresno State, with UC Merced, our Valley changing. Almost 70% of the students there and UC are the first in their family to go to college, like my family. And same with our community colleges, to bridge that income gap. The people in this valley reflect the mosaic of America, and that reflects all of our families. And that's what I love about our valley. It's my home, it always will be.
Congressman, thank you. Ms. Heng, what do you love most about the valley?
I love the most is this. This community taught me truly to become the woman I am today. Growing up in one of the roughest neighborhoods in our whole congressional district in Southeast Fresno, people like me aren't supposed to go to good schools, get great jobs, and we're definitely not supposed to run for Congress. And growing up here, the community leaders, our teachers, they taught me to dream bigger than I ever imagined possible, and I thank you.
Well, I thank both of you. That's it for the questions, all right? I'm going to give you each a closing statement right now. We actually flipped a coin before we started this debate. And, Ms. Heng, you're first up. 60 seconds. Thank you. Your camera's right back there behind me. They'll wave back there so you know which one's yours.
I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here today, KC24, Evan Onstad, and the whole team here, and all of you for listening tonight. I believe that we need a new voice with a fresh perspective to deal with the many challenges that have plagued our community for far too long. I thank Mr. Costa for the service that he has provided to our community. But after 40 years of being in office and 14 years of those being a member of Congress, if he had a vision for our community, I believe in many ways we would have seen it by now. And we are still one of the poorest congressional districts in the whole country. We still don't have enough water storage. We need an immigration policy to work, and we need to invest in our education system so that people break through the vicious cycles of poverty. I hope that I can earn your support in getting me to the finish line so that we'll have a new voice here in the Valley.
Thank you very much. Congressman, 60 seconds, your closing statement.
Yes, and I am that constant voice for the people of this valley, and I want to thank you, Evan and KC, for putting this debate on. It's the 5th candidate event that I've had with my opponent. Sometimes incumbents don't like to do that because they're fearful of giving their opponent exposure. I think that you ought to be willing to go shoulder to shoulder and talk about the important issues affecting our valley. And that's what I do every day, solving problems on behalf of the people. We have an incredible track record of constituent services, and people know that. Oftentimes we get casework from other congressional offices because we follow up. When it's come to helping our veterans, no one's done more for the valley than I've tried to do working with them. When it comes to working together on a bipartisan effort on water, moving the ball forward, we've had success. We must do more. Fixing I listened to my opponent, failed policies, failed policies, failed policies. My gosh, you'd think that I was the king. The bottom line is we have to work together, and we have made progress. And I hope I can earn the support of the voters of this valley. That's what I really care about, because I work for you. And I listen, and I come home every weekend, and that's my job.
Congressman, thank you very much. Election Day is November 6th. Most of you, of course, receive your ballots in the mail here in California. You should already have them. Just make sure you mail them in by next Tuesday, okay? Or drop them off at a polling location, or just go and vote there. If you missed any part of this debate or you just want to watch it again, we will re-air it during Sunday Morning Matters this week, this Sunday, 8 a.m. after Meet the Press. Once again, we'd like to thank Congressman Jim Costa, Elizabeth Heng for being here. We appreciate it very much. Good night.